Ross, welcome to Passion Time. I'm here with Eric Botts. He is one of the members of the Foreign Policy Alliance. This is a new concept. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll explain what this is and if you are interested in joining. But it's looking at relationships with the rest of the world in a different way and our foreign policy decisions based on different concepts. So thank you so much for joining us. And first, I want to ask you, how did you find your passion? Eric has worked in the State Department. Well, he's retired now, but he worked in the State Department for over 30 years, lived all over the world. So what is your passion, and how did you find that you were living your passion?
Well, my passion is relationships and connecting with people, and I spent 30 years in the State Department, 10 of them overseas, and it was an eye-opening experience for me to actually live in countries and deal with my counterparts with the other embassies and with the host country populations, and also dealing with Americans abroad. So that's my passion, is relationships and the world and being open to new ideas.
And getting along better.
Getting along. And that's one of the reasons that I became a participant with this Houston Foreign Policy Alliance.
Now, tell me about the Foreign Policy Alliance. I kind of want to bring up, and we discussed this before, a movie called Why We Fight. It's a documentary, Why We Fight. Eisenhower, the Republican president, at one point said, be careful with the military-industrial complex, and that our economy will be based on that, and we'll be in continuous wars.
Right.
Now, the truth is we have been involved in continuous wars. And you, with the Foreign Policy Alliance, you and the people that are a part of this, want to end that concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. It grew out of a Houston Peace and Justice Center conference last year at TSU. And after the conference was over, some of us decided we wanted to continue the conversation around looking at and possibly reforming U.S. foreign policy. What was interesting about the group that emerged from that conference is that it wasn't your typical left group or right group. We found that it was a broad spectrum of people in terms of political orientation, political beliefs, and we had one thing in common. We felt that the foreign policy of the country at present is ineffective, it's dangerous, it's too costly, and it's not meeting our broad strategic objectives in terms of having good relations with the rest of the world and trying to bring about cooperative relationships to deal with these global problems.
Well, and you're seeing now, do you think that because America is a bit tired of these wars, I mean, I think now we don't have the economic strength to have war after war after war, which it seems our economy was based on war. Can we continue having an economy based on the military-industrial complex?
One of the things that we discussed in the group is that there is a misperception that we need war to drive the economy. And we know that a lot of other countries with vibrant economies don't have it based on a military-industrial model. So in many areas we have ceded manufacturing to countries in Asia, particularly China, where we could be manufacturing. Why do we have to have byproducts from other countries when we're making jet fighter planes or we're making tanks? Couldn't we be making bullet trains and making wind turbines and things like that? So the idea is that you can transition the economy to a civilian-based economy, it still be very vibrant and provide jobs, and not be so beholden to the military-industrial complex, which drives this idea that you use military force to resolve problems.
But that is the idea that, do you feel that you can convince the American people that, hey, for us to defend our security and our vital interests, we need to have a strong military? This is constantly, we hear this constantly. And you mentioned the concept of cooperation and collaboration, which seems to be the future, and we keep talking about this as something in the future, but we're not there yet.
Right. Well, to give you an example is the current deal with Iran on its nuclear facilities and its nuclear program. That was achieved without war. That was achieved with diplomatic leadership. And I don't want to understate how important this was. The United States took leadership, was able to get, can you imagine this? We were able to get an agreement with Russia, China, Germany, the EU, Britain, and France all agreed, along with the Iranians, to a program to dismantle and to put monitoring in place with Iran without the use of military force. So it shows what's possible with using diplomacy and rule of law rather than using military force.
Yes, but then you have another example of Syria, where diplomacy has just been an utter failure, and the United States has kept out of it at the same time that Russia is in it using military power.
Right.
So there's arguments for both sides.
Right. I am not convinced, and this is just me, that the military force, I think we've reached the point past when diplomacy might have been used and might have been effective. Now we're in this death spiral of war and refugees and atrocities, and there's blood on everybody's hands. There's no good side in all this. And what seems to me that I still believe there is a possibility of a diplomatic outcome, but it's going to take a lot of work, and everybody's going to have to be at the table.
It seems, though, that for diplomacy sometimes to work you need military force and military power.
Perhaps you need to have the, in the background, the capability of using the military, but I'm a firm believer that often we resort to that much too quickly in the process.
You talked about the unintended consequences in your bylaws of intervention. What do you mean by that?
Well, often there's blowback. There's an argument to be made that one of the reasons we have ISIS was that the United States invaded Iraq. And the destabilization that came with that invasion, Iraq reordered its society. The Kurds created a proxy state in the north. These Shias became they were always the majority, so they became the more dominant group, but they alienated the Sunnis, who were then became supporters of first Al Qaeda,
right,
and then that morphed into ISIS. So we really don't, when we begin the process of destabilization without a long-term strategic understanding of what that's going to mean, you sometimes get unintended consequences. So that's where we are now with Iraq. With that situation, it's really much out of our control, and the most influential country now in Iraq is Iran.
Right, and now we have, you're thinking we have a better chance of convincing or working with Iran since this deal was signed.
Right.
Tell me, what are some of the goals of the organization with respect to what's going on now in the world? We have an intractable war in Syria, we have problems in Libya, we have Iraq also with tremendous problems, and then the refugee migration crisis, unprecedented.
Right.
People
yes.
don't realize this is the first time since World War II. It might even be worse as far as the number of migrants, or I say refugees. What could your organization do to improve that situation?
Well, here's the most important part. We don't. One of the things that's unique about this group is that we have people who identify as progressive Democrats, conservative Republicans. In fact, one of the chairs of the Harris County Liberty Caucus of the Republican Party is one of our members. We have libertarians, and we have Green Party.
Everybody, well, this would be great
together.
For the future of America,
exactly.
Right? People actually talking and having a conversation.
What it is.
And agreeing on something and doing something to solve problems.
That's exactly right. In other words, we don't profess to have the answers, but what we say is that some of the things that you've mentioned, the difficulties, the problems that we face as a nation, we all have to be part of the conversation about finding solutions to them. So we invite people of different political orientations and political ideologies to sit down to discuss these things. Believe me, coming up with this resolution was a 9-month process.
Wow, okay. Well, if anybody who is watching this is interested in joining your foreign policy, or at least going to a meeting to hear more about what you stand for and how you're working together, what do they have to do?
Just go onto our website, foreignpolicyalliance.org. It's all Foreign Policy Alliance.
It's a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit organization.
And it is a national organization. It's based in Houston,
It's
right?
based in Houston, but we've reached out nationally and we've gotten some endorsements, very key endorsements to our resolution. You can look at our resolution, you can decide whether or not you want to sign on to it. And any events we have, we'll post them there, and please, they're open to the public, please come to our events.
And people can join if they
People
want
can
to.
join, we'd
and-
love to get as many people as we can to sign on to the resolution and help us with bringing this to the rest of our fellow citizens.
All right, thank you so much, Eric Botts, for
you.
joining us, and good luck with the Foreign Policy Alliance. Make sure you, if you're interested, check their website. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you next week on Passion Time.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Cambia tu vida. Cambia tu vida. Cambia tu vida. Yo sé que tú puedes, que tú eres capaz. Cambia tu vida. La vida es una y tú vas a triunfar. Cambia tu vida. Con fe y esperanza las puertas se abrirán. Cambia tu vida. Tu destino tú lo manejas y mucho más. Cambia tu vida. Toma el toro por los cuernos y da.